come. But today you're hearing a lot of stories and a lot of language around identity, choosing who we are and who we want to be. And one of the things that I love about God is always affirming who we are while continuously growing us toward who he has made us to become. We reach these threshold moments in our faith journeys, and we mark those moments, those crossing from one chapter to another. We mark those moments with tangible milestones. That's what today really is about. Threshold moments and tangible milestones. We see it in the book of Genesis as people encounter God and they set up altars. We see it in the book of Joshua as a nation moves into a promised land. They create these stones in memorial of what they've done. We even see it when the people of God are sent off into exile. There's a Psalm 137 says that they hung up their lyres. They hung up their musical instruments because they could not sing the songs of joy of their people. There are these threshold moments, a transition from one chapter to another in our identities, and we mark those with tangible milestones. There are altars and rituals that kind of embody this baptism. We may use the language of sacrament when we talk about baptism. We practice two sacraments within City Coast, baptism and communion. I like how St. Augustine describes sacraments. He says that they are outward signs of an inward grace. Something is happening inside the hearts of people that needs to be marked and celebrated. And when we think about 1 John chapter 5, and we get into the letters that John wrote, which is what our series is going to be for the summertime, and 1 John chapter 5, verse 1. Do I have that on? No. Verses 4 and 5 says that everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Our faith is a victory over the craziness of the world. Who is it that overcomes the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? Today we're talking about victory through belief. Today we're talking about a faith that gives us victory over the world. A belief that Jesus is exactly who Jesus said he was, the Son of God. And here's the thing about fear. I think fear is actually the most powerful force in the world. Like if I really were thinking about it, I took the kids, we went and saw Inside Out, the new one. And if you're familiar with Inside Out, the original cartoon, or the Pixar animation movie, I don't even know what you call them anymore. There's so many different things happening in there. But there are this committee of emotions, right? And there's a control board inside each and every one of us. And all of these emotions are taking their time on the control board. And what you have in Inside Out 1 is really joy is kind of the primary controller of the board. And sadness is trying to kind of get more influence on the board as this girl is moving cross country and going through a very sad experience. And within there you have these committee members like anger and disgust. And all of these together are trying to manage this little girl's life, Riley's life, right? And they have the control board, and whoever's on the controls kind of determines what Riley's going to display. Well, in Inside Out 2, they bring in a whole new group of emotions as Riley goes through puberty. So now you get like anxiety comes in, and envy comes in, and embarrassment comes in, and what was that? Ennui, boredom, yeah, ennui comes in, he's in there. And then you kind of have, nostalgia makes a couple of appearances, she's great. But you have all these characters, right? And the control board is now kind of being taken over. Joy is kind of being displaced by anxiety. And here's the thing about fear. Fear is also one of those primary anxieties. As soon as anxiety shows up, fear says this brilliant line in Inside Out 2, goes, oh, we're going to get along. Anxiety is this manifestation of fear, and fear is probably the most powerful force in the world. And because our world is so fear-oriented, it's almost like the operating system of the world is fear. That our internal operating systems download that whole mindset. And the OS of the world, the operating system of the world, becomes the internal operating system. In the movie, it kind of gives you this beautiful picture of childhood, that joy is the primary one in control. But in reality, in the real world, not in Inside Out, in the real world, fear is probably more in control. Fear is probably the most powerful force in the world. And it's important. Fear keeps us alive, okay? Like if you weren't afraid of a tiger, you'd be like, oh, it's so cute. You have the whiskers, If you weren't afraid of a tsunami, you'd be like, wow, the wave is beautiful. If we weren't afraid of things, we wouldn't survive. That's why I think fear is so powerful. We depend on it for survival. But that survival mindset turns into this striving cycle where we have this mindset, just be safe, 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 be safe. And if we could just get better at everything, if we could just get better physically, then we would be safe. If we could just get our health in order and all the numbers right and all the charts reading out, then we would be safe forever. We would never have to face the fact that we're mortal. If we could just get all of our finances in order, if we could get everything, if we could just get better at managing our finances and putting a little bit of money away and not spending on frivolous things that Amazon says that I need, if we could just get a little bit better at managing our finances, then we would be safe and secure and all these things. If we could just find better friends or make better friends, or if my family member could just be a better person, maybe my relationships would get better in this life and things would just be safer, and I would finally get out of this strive cycle and I would finally know what it is to thrive. If I could just get good enough, physically, financially, relationally. But deep down we live with all these anxieties, right? That none of them are ever enough. And then once we have what we once dreamed of having, we now become afraid of losing it. And the cycles continue. Strive, survive and strive, survive and strive, survive and strive. And I just wonder if there's another system. If John was here today, if Pastor John was writing letters to our church the same way that he wrote letters to the churches in the first century, that's probably what 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John really are. They're 3 letters at least that were packaged together and carried around an area. 1st John was probably meant to be read in a multitude of churches. It's kind of a common letter to all Christians within a region. 2nd John seems like it's a letter that was probably addressed to a specific church within there. So it's like, hey, everybody got to read the first one, but this one's just for you guys. And then 3rd John actually seems like a letter written to a leader probably within that church. So one guy's carrying this multitude of letters around this area. And here's the thing. John is saying there's another system that you can live in. It's a faith system, not a fear system. Your faith will overcome the system of the world. There is another iOS that you can operate from. And John's letters, it was no less scary to the people in John's day and age. They were a fear system culture. They were afraid that the Roman government at any time could isolate them and arrest them. That they could be soloed out as an irresponsible group of people, and that they could be cast aside, they could be persecuted, they could actually be killed for gathering as a church in that day. It was a scary time. And John wanted them to not be afraid. It was also a scary time religiously. It wasn't just about being isolated and arrested by the Romans. You could be infiltrated and abused spiritually. And that's what these letters seem to reveal as John is writing them, that you got to watch out for who gets into your system and who starts forming your soul. Because there are a lot of wicked people and false teachers who will spin a lot of manipulative stuff that will end up abusing your soul. If there isn't a church community, a family of faith, talking about and forming one another in this ulterior system, in this faith system, then we're going to default to the system of the world, the fear-based system of the world. I believe that there is a force more powerful than fear. And here's maybe a good thought experiment for it, because, spoiler alert, the force more powerful than fear is love. This is what John says in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. He says that perfect love casts out fear. There is no fear in love. Now, if I don't know about that. I think fear might be a little more powerful than love. Let me ask you this. What would you do? What would you risk if you knew you couldn't fail? Like if you knew 100% was going to happen, that there was no risk of failure. What would you try if you knew that it would succeed? I've heard a lot of people say things like, man, if I knew I'd be unstoppable, I'd be unstoppable. Like if I had no fear of failure, I would do X, Y, or Z. You probably have a handful of things that come to mind. What would you risk if you knew that you would succeed? If there was no fear of failure, what would you try? Now let me ask you this. What would you try that even if you failed, you knew you'd be loved. What would you be willing to try then? You're not actually afraid of failure. You're afraid that failing makes you unlovable. There is a force more powerful than fear, and it is love. There is no fear in love. Perfect love, the love that God has for humanity, the love that God has for you and me, drives out fear. Notice it doesn't eliminate fear. It doesn't make our world less scary. It doesn't make our life less scary. It expels fear. Whenever fear creeps in, the soul says, that's not how this system of faith works. I know that I am a beloved child of God. That's what 1 John 3 says. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. See what kind of love the Father has given to us. Do you know the love of God? Do you know Christmas, Easter, and heaven are real? Do you know that God so loved the world, he gave his only Son? That God traversed the cosmos to put feet on this planet so that you might know love in the flesh. That's the incarnation. It's the Christmas miracle. He says, greater love has none than this, that someone would lay down their lives for their friends. And that's the Easter message, that God has laid down his life. He has sacrificed himself to bring humanity into fellowship with him for all eternity. That's heaven. Christmas, Easter, and heaven, what a great story. What a great operating system for the soul. It's a faith that gives us victory over the fear-based system of the world. There is no fear in love. See what kind of love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God. Chapter 5, verse 1. Everyone who believes that Jesus is the Christ has been born of God. There is a new life, a new chapter, a threshold moment that happens for all who believe that Jesus is God. It initiates us into a family of faith. We are born into a family of faith. That's what the story of Abraham was all about from the beginning. That there would be this great family of faith, an eternal family of faith. And you get to chapter 3, verse 2, where it says, beloved. What a great name. Don't you just want to walk every day as beloved? Don't you think, wouldn't you be a little less scared if you knew how loved you were by God? Our whole summer series is called Beloved and Fearless, as we work through 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John together. Because I'm convinced that if we would embrace our belovedness, we would fear less and less. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. I love that. I love that in the gospel we get our soul's greatest affirmation. You are a child of God. And we get our greatest inspiration. Glory is still ahead. You are a beloved child of God. And there is eternal glory in your future. The deepest affirmation and greatest inspiration come from a faith operating system. So let me go back to Inside Out for just a second. Because if I could create a Christian version of Inside Out, I'd have all those characters, right? I think that this movie, it does an incredible job of painting the emotional experience of a human being. In particular, it does a really good job of painting the emotional experience of a teenage girl. But here's what I think would happen if we had Inside Out gospel or Inside Out Christian. The Holy Spirit's presence would move into command and control. It's not a feeling. It's not an emotion. The presence of God moves inside the hearts of people. And it empowers this restoration of the control board. The control board now works completely differently as this new being infuses it with belovedness. And an entire sense of self is created around being God's child. And no matter what stimulus comes in from the world, no matter what scary stuff or anxious stuff is happening around us, there's a center to this soul because the Spirit has moved in. And the Spirit now chairs the committee of emotions. The Spirit doesn't make us emotionless. The Spirit regulates all of our experiences. And instead of getting that fear message all the time of be safe, 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 the Spirit says over and over and over again, you're saved. You're saved. You're saved. You're saved. Because there's a difference between being safe and being saved. Yeah. And most people will settle in this world for safety and fall far short of salvation. But when you desire a faith operating system, when you desire the Spirit of God living inside of you, and it happens, that threshold moment is marked with a tangible milestone. It's like a death, a burial, and a resurrection. And out of that moment comes a new creation. A new creation. A beloved and fearless creation.